We welcome you back here inside the booth as we continue a summer series talking with coaches across the country, and we head over to Memphis where head coach Ryan Silverfield joins us. Coach, first off, we were just joking about it. The college football calendar is quite hectic, so we appreciate you taking the time and talking with us a little bit today.
Yeah, ever changing, obviously, right? From official visits to, I think the portal window should be about closed now, but you never know, right? The rule may change while we're in the middle of this podcast, but no, I think things have kind of settled in for the summer and excited to focus on our current team at hand.
You talked about focusing on that current team. You guys are coming off a season where, look, you're near the top of the American Conference, and we all know too, with just watching you in this program, that you're kind of vying for that top G5 spot. I mean, just kind of talk about this past season, the transition out of it, and what are some of the things that maybe you learned about yourself and your staff?
Sure, right. Coming off an 11-2 season, the disappointing part is that we didn't win the conference championship. So it was not really, however you measure success, it wasn't what we needed and set out to accomplish. But, we did win our bowl game and beat West Virginia. And then obviously went down to Florida State and Tallahassee and beat them and beat Tulane on a national televised game on Thanksgiving. But, every year we're learning, right? This is going into my 28th season of coaching, but I still consider, even though this is my 6th year as a head coach, a young head coach, and learning every single year. But as the landscape, as you just mentioned, college football continues to change, just finding out what our team's all about and how we can try to lead and incorporate camaraderie with the roster changes. But, what I found still to this day is about developing the relationships with the guys. We've got enough scheme and X's and O's to last us a lifetime. It's not necessarily the plays, but the guys and putting them in the right situations that have success and no different, right? With last year, with the record being what it was a decent job. But what I appreciate about this place and vying for that top spot, we haven't reached the pinnacle where we need to get to. And I appreciate the fans that want us to continue to push harder, but no one has higher expectations for this program than myself. Year 10 here at Memphis. And right, like we understand that there's a ton of good teams. I'm a firm believer that the American is the best conference and the group of 5. And, look, you got teams like Tulane and Army and Navy and South Florida. Obviously, people have been talking about the resurgence of Boise State and UNLV and those things. I believe the playoff spot should belong to the American Conference winner. But we've got a lot of work ahead. And again, it's a reset. We only returned 3 starters from last year's squad, and we got our work cut out ahead.
You mentioned this, and I think it's a perfect lead-in to kind of what we're talking about with not just you, but a bunch of other coaches. As a lot of this playoff conversation is dominating the headlines, and for you, like we mentioned, a program that is obviously, near the tops of the G5, looking to vie for that spot. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but if you're the big decision maker, what is the voice of the G5 in this? What, from a program like Memphis that's near the top, what do you want to see happen as you talk collectively with coaches at other programs and people inside your administration as well?
Right, sure. I mean, I think everybody wants their team to be in a quote unquote P4, P5, whatever it is, as we sit here today. And just because there's some easier paths for certain things. But, even when I'm sitting down with recruits, I kind of constantly say, listen, does Memphis have a chance to win their conference every single year? And 99.9% of the recruits will nod their head and say, absolutely. Right. And then I'll point out to school X in a conference that, maybe in the SEC, I said, does this school ever have a chance to win their conference? And the recruit laughed and said, hell no. But they're part of this conference. And I said, well, we have an easier path to the playoffs with our team. Right. Obviously, it's something we discussed in recruiting with our administration. But once the season gets going, we can only control what we can control. Right. You go out there and win 11 games and don't go to the playoffs based off of certain things. That's the nature of it, right? So we can just control our best path is to win our conference. And I hope where the chips may lie, I think that those that make the selections will believe that the winner of this conference should have the foot in, right? Obviously, going to 12 teams certainly changed it. 2 years ago, I couldn't have sold the narrative of, hey, coming here and the ability to play for a national championship. That wasn't a reality. Now, I can sit down with people and our own players and transfers and recruits and high school recruits and say, listen, this is a great place where you really can compete for championships every single year. And that's not too far-fetched.
You joked about this at the beginning of the show, saying they could change the rules right during the middle of this podcast. So I have to ask you, you mentioned relationships, and I imagine relationships are important to you when you look at your coaches and their families. How have you weathered, I guess, the ever-changing schedule? There truly is no, I guess, break for these coaches. How have you managed that with your staff, and what are some of those points of emphasis?
Right. The biggest thing as a head coach you can try to do is be organized, right? Obviously, it's our job to lead, but organization will help put the rest of the staff and the players at ease of saying, okay, here's when we're doing things, here's how we do things. In reality, if there's consistency with it, it makes everybody be able to function at a higher level. Unfortunately, there has been no consistency in the calendar. So, in my first 5 years as a head coach, we have not had a single calendar repeat itself. Our poor football operations guy and our administrative assistant, like they can't just copy and paste things and say, okay, hey, we're just going to use this exact calendar from last year other than the game schedule, and we'll go from here. It's no longer this is what you're doing in June because, right, there's teams that are still doing summer official visits, right? Though May, now this 2 years ago in May, we weren't bringing in transfer portal guys. This year we were. But the biggest thing that we try to stay ahead of the curve, we try to have an understanding and roadmap it out for our assistants. I try to make a conscious effort of understanding, look, our assistants work their tails off, obviously during the season, the entire staff. I'm grateful for the amount of hours they put into this thing. And when I can give them a chance to catch their breath, I try to, right? February, supposedly it was dead this past year. Who knows what it'll look like next year. So there's times where I try to give our guys extended weekends in February. I try to give them some true downtime in the summer, but I want them to be around our current players. So it's that fine balance. But it's ever changing. And as we go about just, okay, hey, where do I think is going to put our staff, our players, and myself in the best possible position to have success?
You mentioned this with the previous question, just talking about, and I love that conversation that you alluded to with the recruit about, the chance to win a conference title. Coach, a lot of times, I guess whether it's people in the media, whether it's, talking heads in general, they really like to point to scheduling. If you're a G5 team and you're going to get in, well, you have to schedule X, Y, and Z. You take a look at your schedule last year, you take a look at your schedule this year. I mean, you guys have some good group of five opponents out of conference. You have Arkansas on the schedule on the docket this upcoming year. What's been your philosophy as things continue to change about picking and choosing your spots of where you need to play and who you need to play?
Well, first off, obviously, you're flying that Troy banner behind you, so we got to go down to Troy, Alabama, and play your Trojans. So that they've always been hard, especially on the road. So we look at when we're doing the matchups out of conference, right? Does it regionally make sense, right? The FCS opponent, is it somebody? I don't think it makes sense for us to play a Cal Poly, right? A team that probably not going to draw real well here and not maybe pique the interest of too many locals. And then when we're looking at other G5 teams to play, who can we find that will play us first and foremost? And then, is it generally what's it's been is a home and home. Mm-hmm. And so, that's why we had a home game with Troy last year, and then we're going to their place. The Georgia State game made sense regionally. We do really well in recruiting Atlanta. And that was a makeup game from about 7 years ago, actually, on the docket. And we've had some stuff like with Arkansas State, with them being an hour away in Jonesboro, and then playing whoever we can play. We're fortunate that Arkansas has a home game with us at our place this year, but we go to Arkansas twice in the near future. We go to Boise State the following year in 2026. We had a home game with them the previous year. So, trying to get Boise on the docket again. We got them in 2030 and 2031. Who are some of those marquee matchups that we can get? And we've also reached out to numerous number of P4 teams. For years, we've had the rivalries and the traditional games versus Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Last time that we had those opportunities to play those teams here, we were able to beat them. But as everybody's well aware, it's very hard to find home and homes. And we have such great fans here at Memphis. I don't want to sell them short and just saying, okay, hey, guys, we're going to be playing 5 home games and then 7 away. That's not fair to them, especially with the $2 million renovations we're putting here at the stadium, all the great things going on. But, we want to play anybody we can, possibly. We're constantly making calls. We also know this could change very quickly, right? If the SEC decides to play another conference game, if there's some of this SEC Big Ten stuff that's out there that's been rumored, we take it 1 year at a time. Obviously, our schedule, like I said, we've already planned out. 2 years ago, I signed a contract to play Boise State in 2031, and God willing, I'm still around and coaching the Tigers, then look forward to that matchup when it happens.
I like how you mentioned the banner. I will preface for the people who watch our show and any Memphis fans, I'm at a studio home away from home. I'm not in my home studio. I'm somewhere where a former Troy student. So he did say he's not too optimistic about this year that you guys might be able to get a win, but I like how you gave him a little praise there as well. You know, roster management's huge, and I'm curious. You mentioned you've been in the game for a long time. You've seen this sport evolve just from every which way possible. As a program that does bring in talent, recruits at a very good level, how have you managed the re-recruiting of players on your roster, and what goes into those conversations that maybe to the casual observer they don't see every single day?
Sure. It was very interesting. About 3 years ago, the NCAA and the powers that be said, please don't mention the word roster management. And I vividly remember, even as COVID was happening, so up to 6 years ago, 5 years ago, talking about roster management is going to be the future of what's going on. And now it's the buzzword on every talk show, every podcast. Everybody's mentioning it. And I'm a firm believer it does start with the relationships with your current guys and
Mhm.
being very transparent and truthful. And I think that starts when you're recruiting them in high school, talking to the parents. I sat down with some families this weekend and they said, well, how much is my son going to get paid as a freshman? And do you think he'll be a freshman All-American? And look, I say, I hope, and I hope we can pay him well. But the reality of it is here's what it's going to look like. And here's generally what's happened. And I think that transparency, that openness throughout the entire young man's career has been huge. And then the re-recruiting the roster is just, I tell our guys all the time, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And hopefully maybe they align together. There's going to be a lot of people out there, whether it's family members, agents, handlers, coaches at other schools. They're going to tell you what they think is you want to hear that may benefit you, which they think will benefit you, or maybe they're lies. And I'm just going to tell them, hey, here's the cold hard truth. And I say this all the time. If we come here and we get a guy out of high school and he's a freshman All-American, and then someone's going to offer him $1 million for the next 3 years to leave us, congratulations. Let me shake your hand. I wish you nothing but the best. It's also been the same, right? We have these guys that get developed here. They come here and they've got 6 months left to play football, 7 months to play football, and they're thinking about going in that last window. And I said, really, you're going to go learn a new scheme for the next 7 months? You're going on your third or fourth school. Is that really what it want? And a lot of them just say, you know what, we've got a really good thing here. We're going to go compete for the championship. We're happy here. We've got the facilities. We love our coaches. And so there's some great selling points. We sit there and say, we don't want to have to re-recruit you. We just want to tell you all the reasons why you need to stick around and stay. And long term, right, you'll enjoy it more here and you'll be happy here. And hopefully it leads to success for both parties.
Well, Coach, now I get to talk about the part that's probably what you really want to talk about, and it's on the field expectations, and not all the off-season conversation. 2025 is a season where you mentioned a little bit. You guys are going to have some turnover, a new leader at the quarterback position. As you kind of went through spring ball, what were some of the maybe characteristics that you noticed early on about this group, and what do you hope the identity of this team is?
Yeah, I mean, pretty interesting to sit there and say that we're returning only 3 starters on the entire team from last season, 3 full-time starters, and 3 of them, 2 of them were offensive linemen, and then one was a defensive lineman. And that's rare, to sit there and say we got a lot of pieces to fix and figure out where we're missing. So going into spring, you sit there and say, I can learn a lot about these guys. And then we also added quite a few guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball in the spring window. I don't hope that, there are a ton of missing pieces as we're going into that window, but certainly found some guys that we think are capable of helping us at a high level. I don't sit there and put numbers on it, right? I get asked all the time when I'm out public or public speaking, hey, how's the team looking? Look, they're working their tails off. They love football. They're willing to work. They're being held accountable. And that's what I appreciate about it. I think this day and age in college football, right, what gets lost is the guy's still willing to work. And I've talked to head coaches throughout college football and saying, listen, it's getting harder and harder to hold our guys accountable. It's getting harder and harder to push them on and off the field because of the fear of losing them to transfer, or how are they going to react because maybe it wasn't as hard, or the people always say that college football is not as hard on the guys as it used to be. Well, I tell our guys we're going to work harder than we ever have, and this is the way it's going to be, and this is the direction we all got to pull in. and then obviously enjoy working with them. And ultimately, I think we're going to have success. But we got a long ways to go before our first game, and like a lot of these schools, we take it as a one day at a time approach. We got to do right in this summer conditioning and then the workouts, and then we'll figure it out. In reality, I don't think anybody knows what their football team looks like till about midway through October. And then you got to kind of get an idea of what your identity is and all that. But we got smart, tough guys. We've got some explosiveness, even at some of the positions that lack experience. I think we've got some speed, and hopefully it shows up on Saturdays this fall.
The last one here for you, Coach. I know obviously you mentioned you've spent some time now at Memphis. Has it gone faster maybe than you originally envisioned? And just what does this place mean to you, your family, as you kind of continue into another year?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And sometimes the way this calendar's gone, as we discussed a few minutes ago, it's very rarely do you get this time to sit back and reflect, right? You can't sit there and say, wow, last year or even, 5 years ago, and it's flown by, right? Going into year 10, it's the one place. That's a great thing. And I'm very blessed, and it's an honor to sit here and be the head football coach at the University of Memphis. Where it really hit home was this past weekend, sitting down with a family, and they were discussing, okay, well, the young man has just turned 17 years old, and he was kind of asking me about my coaching history. And I said, well, since you've been born, reality of it is majority of my career now, I've either been in the NFL or at Memphis. So for really 17 years, coaching in the NFL or at Memphis, and the family just kind of looked at us like, that's bizarre. I know obviously like a coach like Belichick would have certainly I'm not comparing myself, but hey, I was with the New England Patriots this long, so many of these kids go to all these schools and said, yeah, well, the coach I just left, on an official visit, he's on his 9th school in 9 years. And I said, well, that should tell you something. But it's an awesome, awesome place. It's very special. It's near and dear to my heart. We've been fortunate, right? We had the team highest GPA in program history with a 3.4 last spring. Like I mentioned earlier, putting $200 million into the stadium, building a football-only academic center, building some beautiful dorm-style apartments right across the street from our complex, and, hopefully continue to be a top 25 team. But we're taking a one day at a time approach, and it's an honor to be the head coach here.
Head coach Ryan Silverfield, we appreciate the time, and obviously for a lot of our viewers and everything, hope that they can tune into some Memphis games this year and see what you guys are about, Coach. We're excited to kind of monitor y'all's progress throughout the year. And once again, we appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Yeah, Bryce, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys.